is just how many military characters were surrounding him. Even in September 10th, people that were in the hospital, right? Let's just, take a look at the chart that we have put together. And this is in an early phase, but it's interesting at the very least, okay? We've got Frank Turek. And Frank Turek, if we want to go through this, we got Andrew Colvett, Rob McCoy, Mikey McCoy, Tyler Boyer. Let's start with Frank Turek, if we have that card. And Frank Turek, again, has been honest, former officer in the U.S. Navy. And then he turned to Christian apologetics. He has 2 sons that are in the military, fly planes, as well as one of his son's spouses that's in the military. Again, he's never lied about this. Andrew Colvett, by the way, if you don't know, I didn't know. I don't think Charlie knew. Certainly not when Tyler brought him or when he got hired. His brother, Captain Kurt Colvett, is in the military. His cousin, Captain Robert Colvett, is high up in the military. So that's interesting. Very interesting to me, at least, because I just am like, oh, that's kind of something I was not aware of. I thought he was just a PR guy, someone that was working PR and was found and things, went forward. Obviously, Rob McCoy, another pastor, but a pastor with a very strong military background. Pastor Rob McCoy, his father was a naval captain, Roy Edgar McCoy, but also, and this is kind of shocking, his father was also the assistant chief of staff for psychological warfare in the Navy. Psychological warfare. This is the name of the game. And that trajectory is increasingly interesting to me. I think we have this clip from an investigative journalist named George Webb, who speaks a little bit further about Rob. And obviously, this is Mikey McCoy's family. Take a listen.
McCoy does have this strange military background. He does have this strange, seemingly putting his son in there and guiding the hand for this new apostolic revival. That he is a NAR person. He is the NAR push for Charlie. Charlie was meeting with NAR. NAR were the $25 million and above donors from the Christian right. The Ziklag was the name of the organization. So all that's correct. That's correct information. And
Justin's the CFO, chief financial officer, and Mikey's the chief of staff. And I'm watching, the minute Charlie was shot, he called me, says, "Dad, Charlie's been shot in the neck. Please call every pastor and pray." I said, "Okay, son." He has wits about him. He was just directing. He had blood all over him. And
the minute Charlie was shot, he called me, says, "Dad, Charlie's been shot in the neck. Please call every pastor and pray." He had blood all over him, and Pastor Rob McCoy also claims that Mikey is covered in blood. 6 hours after Charlie died, don't you dare get in the way. The Turning Point USA Wikipedia received a rather interesting update. Pastor Rob McCoy somehow got his own heading, and then Candace Owens stepped in with a question that could shake the entire TPUSA establishment. At the center of the controversy, she discovered, was Charlie Kirk's former pastor, Rob McCoy. The revelations were so shocking that McCoy, she said, was scrambling to find evidence, gather documents, and even send harsh messages directly to her. But the most shocking part wasn't McCoy's alleged role in Charlie's case. Candace also said that Pastor McCoy had allowed a person with a criminal record to participate in church activities, and that person had contact with young people who attended the church. A chilling detail that no one understood why that was acceptable. And now, according to the video, they want to cut a deal with you, and they want to see if you want to do a plea bargain before we get to a pretrial. So, if you haven't heard of Rob McCoy, he's the pastor at Godspeed Calvary Chapel, who has been Charlie Kirk's best friend, spiritual guide, and companion for years. At least that's what people have always believed. But the question is, was that friendship genuine, or were there other layers of information the public never knew about? Because in the immediate aftermath of Charlie's passing, things began to unravel around Rob McCoy and his son Mikey McCoy, who served as TPUS's chief of staff right before Charlie lost his balance. The online community, who had been following the case from the start, quickly noticed a strange detail about Mikey's behavior right before Charlie lost his balance. In the viral video, Mikey doesn't run to help, nor does he appear panicked. Instead, he calmly walked away with the phone to his ear as if the call had already begun. And this is the question that set the internet ablaze. Who was Mikey talking to less than a second before Charlie collapsed? Some people said he might have been calling Erika Kirk. Others said it was Pastor Rob. But what was even more surprising was how each person in this story gave a different version of themselves. Pastor Rob McCoy publicly stated that Mikey called him at the scene. He also said that his son looked extremely distraught because he had witnessed the entire incident. However, what is striking is that this account does not entirely match the video that has gone viral. And I'm watching the minute Charlie was shot, he called me, says, "Dad, Charlie's been shot in the neck. Please call every pastor and pray." It's okay, son. He has wits about him. He was just directing. He had blood all over him. But if that's true, then we go back to the original question. Why does Mikey look so calm? Why did the call happen before anyone could react? And why does each account create a layer of ambiguity instead of clarifying the truth? This is where the public gets confused. Not because they want to believe extreme theories, but because the little details, times, actions, statements do not add up. Every time one story seems clear, another detail immediately appears, making the picture more confusing. So the question is not who to blame or who to accuse, but rather, why do those closest to Charlie come up with different pieces of the puzzle? And why is it that the more they explain their story, the more confused the public becomes? He was just playing the part, as if making up a story to make sense of it all. Pastor Rob McCoy described Mikey as covered in marks from the incident. But the question immediately arises, how? Because everyone sees in the video that Mikey walked away before Charlie lost his balance, and he did not approach Charlie at all after the incident. There is no moment where they were in contact or standing close enough to explain Rob's detail. So why did Pastor McCoy tell it that way? Why add such a debatable detail? Some have suggested that he was trying to paint Mikey as a brave man, as if he had rushed to Charlie's aid instead of appearing in the video, as someone who calmly left the scene without looking back. But what happened next takes the story in an even more confusing direction. Erika Kirk claims that she was the first person Mikey called after the incident. An article in the New York Times described Erika's words as follows. Miss Kirk was sitting in her mother's hospital room at 11:23 a.m. in Phoenix when she saw the call from her husband's longtime assistant, Mikey McCoy. Looking back, she said she knew the words, "He's in trouble," even before Pastor McCoy yelled. So Erika and Rob McCoy both claim Mikey called them immediately seconds after the incident. The problem is it couldn't have happened at the same time unless it was a group call. But neither of them mentioned it, and even if it had been, their accounts don't match. Erika says Mikey yelled, "He's in trouble." Rob claims Mikey calmly said they were aiming for Charlie's neck. These are two completely different versions, both in content and emotion. And then there's the video. The footage is clear. Mikey holds the phone to his ear without dialing a number, swiping the screen, opening the calling app, doing absolutely nothing. He just picks it up as if the call had started before Charlie collapsed. So, what's going on here? The question isn't who to accuse, it's about clarifying the truth. Because right now, we have a video that shows actions that don't match the account. Two completely contradictory accounts of the time and content of the call, a Tristan detail that the video doesn't prove, and a central character, Mikey, who appears in the video with an unusually calm demeanor in the midst of chaos. The strange thing isn't that people are asking questions. The strange thing is every time someone tries to explain, the story gets more confusing. The timing, the actions, the testimony, and the video, all of it forms a series of pieces that don't fit together. And as those closest to Charlie tell the truth in different ways, the public is left wondering what really happened in the first seconds after the incident. Mikey McCoy is amazing. The phrase has now become a viral meme, but not in the way those involved would have liked. Because more and more people online are saying that Mikey's reaction in the moment Charlie went down was unnatural. In fact, many are saying he looked more like someone who knew what was coming than someone who was watching it happen. But things get even stranger when Erika Kirk, in her first public appearance since her husband's death, has some very kind words for Mikey McCoy. Her voice trembling with emotion, she says, "I want to thank the first responders who struggled heroically. And I want to thank the Turning Point USA board, the COO, Justin Strife, and my husband's chief of staff, the amazing Mikey McCoy." Wait a minute. wait a minute, let's see that again. And my husband's chief of staff, the amazing Mikey McCoy, this is the moment that made the internet explode. Because as Candace Owens pointed out, why is Mikey being called a hero when the video of his reaction shows the exact opposite? It was obvious to everyone. Mikey didn't panic. Mikey didn't run to help. Mikey calmly walked away while on the phone. So why in Erika's first speech, out of hundreds of names she could have named, did she choose to praise Mikey by deliberately repeating the word amazing? Some people thought it was just a sincere thank you, but others felt something was wrong. Because in many other speeches and interviews by people in the Turning Point USA orbit, Mikey, who was only 23 years old, was repeatedly described with words like hero, great, amazing, as if they were trying to build his image right at the moment when the public was asking questions. There was one interview that attracted a lot of attention when an insider said with emotion, "Let me tell you who the heroes are in this whole story. We'll start with Mikey McCoy, 23 years old." And then the person continued, "And that's when the great Mikey McCoy came along. What the public kept wondering was, why did they emphasize that name so obsessively? When the video itself, the clearest visual evidence, doesn't show Mikey doing anything heroic. All of this raises a whole new set of questions. Who is building the narrative around Mikey? Who wants to portray him that way? And why is it important to emphasize Mikey's role at the very moment people are starting to question his reaction on that fateful day? Increasingly, the public feels there is a covert effort to reshape Mikey's image. In the Turning Point USA orbit described Mikey McCoy in this very unique manner. I want you to take a listen to that. Let me tell you who the heroes were in this whole thing. We're going to start with 23-year-old Mikey McCoy. And that's when the great Mikey McCoy showed up. And my husband's chief of staff, the amazing Mikey McCoy. My friend Mikey McCoy, the brilliant 24-year-old who, at the time when Charlie was shot, was 23 and was a hero that day. I used to be known as Charlie Kirk's pastor. Now I'm known as Mikey McCoy's dad. He clipped into gear eventually. It was amazing. Mikey was a heroic figure on that day, an inspiration. But then the story took a completely different turn. Candace Owens has just revealed a shocking revelation. Not about Mikey this time, but about his father, Pastor Rob McCoy. And it's enough to make all the previous praise seem confusing. According to Candace, Pastor McCoy once allowed a member of his congregation, a man with a criminal record, to participate in youth activities at the church. This has the community asking, how could a church leader not look closely? And why would he let it happen? But it doesn't stop there. Candace shared that she received an email from a now adult who claimed to be the victim in the case. I hope I'm saying his last name right. Thomas Kimono was a man who was factually put away into prison. I'm going to read you an email that I received from one of his victims, who is now an adult. I was 8 years old, living in Dana Point, California, when Thomas approached my friend and I to help him find his cat. He took us to a park behind my house and tried to molt me before I ran away. I was a key witness in his trial before he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. What confused the public was not the sentence. It was that Pastor McCoy not only allowed the man to interact with youth at his church, but also brought him on his podcast, giving him the opportunity to say that he was wrongly convicted. He goes, comes back guilty, unbelievably guilty, and I wind up doing, give me an 8-year sentence, didn't have a record, so I did 4 years change. So I did 1536 days for a crime that I didn't commit. It actually gets what? For some, this story is a reminder that there can be wrongful convictions in the past, but for others, opening the door for someone who has been involved in a serious incident to teenagers is incredibly confusing, even unacceptable. And then things get messy when Candace insists it's actually worse. She suggests that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And what's underneath could change the entire way we view Rob McCoy, how he operates, and why he's so protective of his son's image. The big questions are, why would a pastor take such a risk? Why does he continually push Mikey into the hero role even when the viral video suggests otherwise? And why are these details emerging just as people are beginning to question Mikey's response to Charlie's incident? What seemed like a simple story, praise, thanks, has now turned into a series of unanswered questions, raising questions about motives, hidden truths, and details the public has never known. But the most important thing is this is not Candace's speculation or making things up. The man she mentioned was actually convicted, had a clean record, and served 8 years in prison. That's not in the realm of ambiguity or controversy. It's a fact that's been recorded in court. As soon as the information was made public, many former members of Pastor Rob McCoy's congregation began speaking out. Some claimed that this was widely known within the church all along, and that many families had left because of it. One person on X even wrote, "I left right after I was baptized there because of this." When people asked why Thomas Camino was allowed to run small groups and interact with teenagers, the answer they received was simply that it was a mistake and that the leadership believed he had changed. But in Pastor McCoy's Hour Plus podcast with Camino, he did not condemn the incident, did not offer any warning, and instead allowed the man to claim he was wrongly convicted and spent 1,136 days in prison for a crime beam. This left the community asking, why would a pastor let this happen? Why didn't he look more closely? And why did he not address the risks of inviting someone with a serious past to appear on air in such a way? The Charlie Kirk story becomes even more confusing when one looks at the sermon that Pastor Rob McCoy gave just before Charlie's incident. In it, he claimed that Charlie had changed his views after a meeting in Hampton, as if there had been some major ideological shift that the public had never heard Charlie speak about. Rob said, "We were at the pastor's summit. It was extraordinary." Charlie has now turned the tables on the debate about Israel in the Christian community, and now he is focusing on Islam. He is against Islam, which is extraordinary, but the threats against him have increased rapidly since then because it is a religion of peace. Everyone listened and paused. This story is not only confusing, but also self-contradictory. Rob says that Charlie was trying to avoid tension about Israel, then immediately says that he was moving on to another topic and receiving more threats. There was no confirmation from Erika, no confirmation from T. Pusk, no public statements from Charlie to support what Rob said. So why did Rob tell that story as a matter of fact based on what conversation? Based on what evidence? Candace Owens had to say, "What are you talking about, and why are you saying that?" The confusion lies in the fact that Rob's story doesn't fit the timeline, the actions, or the public information that everyone has heard Charlie share. And what the public can't ignore is every time Rob says something about Charlie, the story becomes more ambiguous instead of clear. When put next to the detail that he once allowed people with sensitive past to contact young people, the community begins to wonder if Pastor McCoy is accidentally revealing something, trying to steer the story in a certain direction, or hiding things that the public doesn't know. The more they put the pieces together, the more confusing the picture becomes. This is no longer a simple coincidence, it's more like a series of contradictions, anomalies, and unanswered questions. And the biggest question now is, why does all the details surrounding Rob McCoy, from the congregation, the podcast, to the story about Charlie, continue to contain such strange points? Why did Rob McCoy mention that Charlie started receiving threats after he supposedly changed his stance? This detail has given many people pause because it raises a big question. Was someone trying to steer the story in a certain direction early on? Some even question whether there was an attempt to frame the blame on the Muslim community before. Tyler Robinson's name even appeared in any reports. It's a heavy theory. But Rob's words inadvertently opened the door to that question. But it didn't stop there. Podcaster Baron Coleman did a video analysis of Rob McCoy's lecture. And right in the middle of that live stream, in front of thousands of people, Rob McCoy suddenly made his lecture private and removed it from his YouTube channel immediately. This caused a stir online because if the sermon was simply a sharing of faith, why was it removed so quickly? Why was it made private just when someone was analyzing and asking questions? And why the immediate action as if to erase all traces? One commentator said, "I have spent a lot of time researching the Calvary Chapel phenomenon and the role of Rob McCoy, and everything is strange, really strange." Another asked directly in the live stream, "Have they taken the video down yet?" And the answer was yes. No announcement, no explanation, just silence and an unusually quick removal. That is when a series of questions arose. If there was nothing to hide, why was the video removed? Why was it deleted just when someone was analyzing? Why was it removed so hastily as if afraid something would be revealed? When asked about this, Candace Owens made a controversial but thought-provoking comment. Pastor McCoy seems to have quite a few secrets up his sleeve. According to Candace, there is a detail that few people pay attention to. Most of the people in TPU's faith group, a group of pastors and spiritual advisors affiliated with Turning Point USA, are former military personnel. This is public information, but few people have ever asked the question, why does a media political organization have so many religious figures with military backgrounds? And then the information that confuses the community even more, Rob McCoy's father is a Navy captain. Not only that, according to reports, he was also the assistant chief of staff in charge of psychological warfare, a field directly related to communications, perception orientation, and information management in the military. When you put all of that together, people start to wonder, who is Rob McCoy really, and what role does he play in this story? Because no one can ignore the fact that a pastor whose father worked in the field of psychological warfare was the one who spoke out, asking the public not to question, not to consider, not to analyze Charlie's passing or the views Charlie had expressed before his death. Why would a pastor ask that? Why ban questions at a time when faith is most challenged? And why was he the one who told details that did not match anyone else? The community began to realize that McCoy was not just telling a story. He was taking the story in a specific direction by pulling in the elements of threat, change of position, religious conflict. He created a context that made listeners feel like this was indisputable. But when his video was dug up, he quickly removed it. That has led some to ask the all-important question. Is Rob McCoy trying to control the narrative, or is he trying to hide something? Because no matter how you look at it, his actions, his words, his contradictions, and the way he deletes content all have the color of someone who fears scrutiny. While no one knows the final answer, one thing is certain. Every time Rob McCoy appears, the story gets murkier rather than clearer. And that's what keeps the public questioning his true role in the whole picture. If you've made it this far, thank you for taking the time to dig into the details that so many people choose to ignore.